The Michael Zach saga continues.
Oh,
the relationship gets good, and then it just gets
soured, like Sour Patch Kids.
Oh, sour. That's actually funny. We were talking about this earlier, but we call Jordan our Sour Patch Kid. So sweet, so sour. Depends on the day.
So
great.
is this first and second cousins? Because you were talking about.
It might be more interesting what I'm going with, but this will be. I was at a birthday party yesterday.
Oh yes,
you were not there. Were your kids in
skipped
sports or something, or you were doing stuff?
Well, so I think I told you a little bit off
your
air.
work.
Yeah, they're doing this cloud cutover, and it's not going so great. We may have to roll back and try again next weekend. There's kind of like what's it called? A cascade of error, or cascade of issues that we're going through. So we'll learn from this one and maybe do it next week. You know, it's okay to fail. Fail forward. You know what I'm saying?
Fail forward. That's great. As long as you learn. It's not good to just fail for failing's sake, but you're taking something from it. It's okay to push it up.
Yeah. And I'm not like I'm a technical guy, but I'm not the technical guy in this respect. So I'm just kind of listening in to them try to solve the problems.
I see.
It's like, how do I encourage them? You know,
I see. Yeah.
You know, if I was like corporate America, I'd like send some pizzas their way or something. Because that's what people always do. But
it's like morale. Pizza party. Yeah. That wins everything.
Where's our Christmas bonuses? Well, we got you a pizza party this year.
Speaking of pizza, at this birthday party, had some good pizza, you know? Love it. But speaking of failing, I feel like I failed. And what I don't know if Jill probably didn't say anything, but I was standing near Jillian and I were when the happy birthday song is sang.
Okay.
And she says this wasn't directed at me. As soon as we started singing it, I'm not the greatest singer.
Yeah.
I think I was off key a little bit. She just starts laughing. And I was like, "Are you laughing at me?" She's like, "Oh, no, everyone's off key." But I think it was kind of targeted towards me. So Jill, you can be honest. You're not gonna hurt my feelings. It was rough out there. Happy birthday, and kids were there's a lot of kids.
It's so funny. I will put this in the link below.
Okay, yeah.
But there is this guy who does 5 versions of Happy Birthday, 5 levels of Happy Birthday.
Nice.
And the first one is probably what you're describing. She's like, "Happy birthday," and it's like everyone. It's like no one's, and then it goes on to this, and it's like this over harmonized, version. So,
it works its way up. So she instantly bursted into laughter, but said it was not totally wrong. She said she was thinking also of like the Hawks and Kayla. She was thinking of something like that was really funny where, someone would always sing something or interject at the wrong time. There was something funny. It was like really a funny thing.
Right.
So I think she's trying to make me feel better. But anyway.
Yeah.
Failing forward, birthday song. I don't know if you've had any birthday,
First and
mishaps.
Cousins? No.
Yeah.
What was your question? If I had any?
Well, I've got a lot of first cousins.
Yeah. You ended on a question that I overspoke on, so I was trying to get.
No, I was gonna say any birthday mishaps. We talked about. I had a birthday mishap when I was 13. My house caught on fire.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, nothing like that. I remember. My parents worked hard. We were probably upper lower class or lower middle class. Some like you don't really know that sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But then as I got older, they started being able to, mom got several promotions, so things got a little bit easier. But I remember for my 18th birthday, like you can kind of think of like things you would get for your 18th birthday.
Oh yeah.
I don't know what would be some things you would think of?
Like in a perfect world, it'd be cool to get like a car is probably too big. But it's like you're 16, 18. That's like a big day.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other big things. Yeah.
Luggage is what I got.
Hey, a good pair, a good luggage thing is hard to come by.
Yeah, and it did serve me well.
Yeah.
So it was like one of those good practical gifts, but I opened it, I was like, luggage on my 18th birthday.
It's
I
like,
felt
by
bad
the way,
afterwards.
leave the house. We want you're on your own.
But it did serve me well. But Jill still makes fun of me because she was there and she was like, you can see the look on my face, like.
Yeah, presents are such a tricky thing when expectations are it's always funny. I always have this joke with my sister, like on Christmas one time, she got like a sweater. But I don't know that I think she liked the sweater, but we were like 4 or 5 gifts in and she was like, "Oh, I actually like this," or something. She's like, "Actually," and they were like, "Tori, Does that mean you weren't appreciative of your other gifts? But it's always tough, especially when it's like it's like you're getting 1 or 2 gifts, and it's like even if it's luggage and it was like a lot of money or something, it's a tough thing.
Yeah, and I don't know what I expected. I did have a car.
Okay, yes, so you're good.
I had what people called the land yacht. It was an Oldsmobile. It was a 1988 year. But Oldsmobile Delta 98, which was like the top of the line, had the gray liner, cassette player, electric seats, electric windows. Like it was tricked out for 1988.
Oh yeah.
And this was, 88. Maybe it was 84. It was old, but yeah. So, and I had a pretty nice stereo that went to college with me. So. I don't know what I was expecting. I was just not expecting luggage.
It's great. Did you do the old? You have like the old cassette player with the little connection for.
Absolutely.
That's great. Yeah,
for your CD player.
Yeah. That's classic. That came in big time before like CD players were just like ubiquitous.
Right.
Same thing as my first cars I had were older cars, which were great, but it's like man, and now today it's like. What's a CD? It's just, It
is crazy thinking about CDs. But they exist,
They do exist.
And,
that's true.
And you kind of know what the nature of a CD is.
Yeah.
You know what it is. It's not the same as an 8-track. They're different.
It's not the. That's right. Yeah. That's great. Things like the floppy disk. We don't do a lot of floppy disk stuff now, but it survives because it's like the save symbol. Like it just survives.
There's some funny thing about someone had a floppy disk. Like you made the symbol. No, this is what it was from.
Boy, and those things cannot hold a lot of memory.
I mean, I remember it's 1.44 megabytes.
Wow,
1.44 megabytes, and I remember thinking this is a lot of because by the time we were around, what we called a floppy disk, there was the 5 1/4 that was actually floppy, and then there was the hard thing that had the little slidey things. It wasn't as floppy, but I think the 5 1/4 was like 512 kilobytes maybe.
Okay.
So when you get the 1.44 megabytes, you're like, well, we're
game changer. Yeah, because even a little bit later than that, maybe is like when MP3 players first started coming out, a lot of them were like 400 kilobytes or something, and you could store like 40 songs, maybe 100. It's like there's a finite number of songs that was on that thing.
Yeah, they weren't the highest quality. I remember having to like down quality so you could fit more on your MP3 player.
You could put more on there, great. And then you got LimeWire and your computer crashed because you're downloading. Yeah. Dude, I'll tell you, we're all over the place. We can wrap up this banter, but man, when you first could like burn CDs, that was the wild west, man. You could do anything.
I remember my sisters having a cassette player with a radio in it and waiting for a song to come on, and then hitting record, and then you got to wait there, and like if the DJ talked over it, you were upset. Like you don't like stop talking, just let the music play. And then you would like stop recording, and you would make a tape. And then Napster came out, and while it was still questionably legal. You could make whatever fave CD you wanted to.
Dude, make anything you wanted. Game changer. So we started with birthdays, ended with Napster, and if you thought it couldn't get any better than this, it can. We're going to talk about Aquinas' argument for God's existence. So get hyped. Let's take it to the next level. From the heart of the Low Country in South Carolina.
It's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level. All right, so this is our second installment in kind of we're trying to hit every month. It may be a little longer than a month sometimes, a little shorter than a month sometimes, but installment on apologetics and apologetics arguments.
Nice.
Last one, hopefully everyone remembers, cosmological argument.
Do we have a nice, I know we didn't land on a neat name for like something Thursday. What's a T word we were talking about?
Oh, yeah.
It was like,
it should be like,
anyway.
Theology Thursday or
Theology Thursday. Is there apologetic adjacent word that starts with T? Like, anyway, something to ponder.
Yeah. Maybe ChatGPT can help.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
But he's good at those kind of things. But so I thought we would kind of give another somewhat akin to the cosmological argument, but this one is more from a scholastic is the word I'm looking for. Scholastic point of view. So,
yes.
you know, I don't want to give everyone the whole history, but you know, you had these huge philosophers, Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. And then, actually, let me give them an order: Socrates, Plato, Aristotle.
Yeah, that's good. I always mix up. I don't know their orders as well as I should. That's good.
Yeah. So Socrates is first. His student was Plato, and then Aristotle was his student. And then some of Aristotle's, you know, their writing was lost, you know, through the Dark Ages, and then it was rediscovered, translated, and Aristotle became so ubiquitous with the way of Western thinking that people would just refer to him as the philosopher.
That's it. He was
the
just
philosopher.
so
the
ingrained.
philosopher said this. And so you see his huge impact, and Thomas Aquinas takes a lot of what he writes because Aristotle had a lot of good things to say. You know, we threw out.
Oh yeah.
The problem is, let me interrupt my story. He had a bad physics, right?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
You know, the Earth is the center.
Yeah.
You know, and we threw out the physics, and then we also threw out the metaphysics. That was the bad thing. We threw the baby out with the bathwater. But Thomas Aquinas, you know, took what he had right in the philosophy and the metaphysics, but tweaked it so that, you know, he was believed in lots of different gods. And so, like, okay, he's saying some right things, but let's just tweak it to make it right so that it is in line with reality. And so this really falls out of one of those things. And I don't think we talk a lot about essence.
I think this is going to be great because I personally am like, man, what's essence? What's substance? Like, I don't understand like what we're trying to say. And I don't know if I'll ever be like satisfied totally, but I think this is good.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's some of that scholastic period, a lot of rigor with like the philosophy. It's like really well done and really, it's not just like we're throwing stuff at the wall.
Right.
Not that we have to call it this, but maybe at least for a couple times. This is a Thomist Thursday.
Thursday? Yeah.
Anyway, carry on.
And so there's an argument for God's existence just from the fact that you exist, Zach.
Okay.
Or this microphone exists. And really it has to do with this essence-existence distinction. So you mentioned this word substance. Mm-hmm. A substance would be something that qualities could adhere in. So you are a substance. Water is a substance.
Can you abuse substances?
Yeah, you can abuse substances. You can have substance abuse. And so then, you know, when we were talking maybe 3 or 4 or 5, 16 podcasts back, we talked about hylomorphic dualism versus
who could forget
Cartesian dualism. You know, really that's a debate about if the human is two different substances that kind of interact some way, or are you one substance that is both physical and non-physical?
Gotcha.
So those are the substance word. But really, we could leave substance alone here because we're going to be talking about different substances, but we're going to be talking about the essences and the existence of those substances. And I think when we say essence, you kind of know, like we're familiar with that term. Maybe nature or form might be another word that you might be, they all kind of mean the same thing. And it just really defines what something is.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know why this is, but trees are always what philosophers immediately turn to.
Trees, yeah. I like it.
But you know what a tree is.
Yeah.
Right? If I held a rose to you and I was like, this is a tree.
I would slap that thing out of your hand saying, no, thank you, sir. Not a tree.
And then if I said why, you might struggle a little bit to go, tell me why it's not a tree.
Exactly. You just know.
You're like, well, it's shorter. Well, there are some short trees.
Yeah.
It's, you know, so you might struggle and know, but you kind of internally know it's not a tree.
Yeah.
And then it might take you a while to kind of like define what makes a tree and what makes a rose a rose.
I will say this is probably not what you're going after either, but it's like those people that are like, if someone came up to me, this is way off topic, but if they're like, hey, what do you think about this tomato? But it's a fruit. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something where it's like, you know, those people that they're just like, it's like, well,
tomato's
that's
a fruit,
tricky.
not a vegetable.
Exactly. Yeah. Where it like looks like a vegetable. It's like people might commonly associate with vegetable, but it's a fruit.
Yeah. That's because they're mixing up culinary words and botany words.
Oh, is it from a culinary perspective, it is a vegetable because it is
all day long. It's a vegetable.
Oh, I never knew this. Okay, gotcha. I always just associate it as a fruit. So that's what I was taught.
It's dumb. Okay. There is no botanical definition of a vegetable.
Okay.
A vegetable can be a fruit, a leaf, a stalk, a root. Yeah.
So at its essence,
biologically, it's a fruit.
Okay, gotcha.
But culinarily, we use it as a vegetable.
Okay, so like your essence, depending on what perspective you're looking at, could be slightly different or something like that.
Yeah. So we could define. You could define. What is the essence of a fruit? And if your viewpoint is culinary, you might say something that's sweet. Or if you're, what is a vegetable, then you might also have different ideas what that is. One thing I like to. When we're talking about essence is a unicorn. Do you know what a unicorn is?
I do, yes.
Could you describe it for our audience?
It's got one horn coming out. Looks like a horse.
Yeah.
There was a very famous, there was like a girls, Rosa Franklin. Is this something like girls, like in elementary school, like girls like had this thing, like all their folders, all their pens would be like something, and a lot of those would be unicorns, but it was like some sort of like phrase. But
I'm not familiar with that. But you could, if I showed you a picture that looked like a bear and said this is a unicorn.
Oh yeah, I would say that. I don't think so. Yeah.
Which is odd because it leads us into this next idea of existence. So we talked about we talked about essence, the characteristics, what defines a thing to be a thing. But there's also existence, and that unicorn that we talked about, we could describe its essence, but it has never existed. It's never had the quality of existing.
Yeah.
Or a Stegosaurus, T-Rex.
But unicorns in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Is it like King James Version or something?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's always a funny one. Yeah.
Anyway. A Stegosaurus, you would know maybe you know what a Stegosaurus is.
How dare you? How dare you? Yeah, it's a dinosaur.
Yeah. But do you know?
I could, if someone showed me a picture of it, I could get like with the tail, with like the, things, you could rocky tail or whatever.
Differentiate an Ankylosaurus, a Triceratops, a Stegosaurus.
Yes. Yeah. I bet I could.
Yeah. Okay. And so then we are talking about their essences, but those things have not existed for a long time.
Yeah.
So we're kind of going through this to help people get into their mind this category of existence and essence. One of my professors used to say, if you've ever had a balloon, most of our balloons are kind of just straight, but there are some balloons that have like twists in them.
Yeah.
And so the balloon with the twist kind of defines the essence, but it doesn't really exist until you blow air into it. So you can kind of differentiate existence itself, like the act of existing, that gets paired up with an essence.
Okay.
So
I like that.
Everything good so far?
Yeah. Pretty good. I think I at least could define essence and existence.
Okay. So finite beings, for all of finite beings, we have a distinction between our essence and our existence.
It's different. Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So whether it's a horse, a tree, a person, we all have a specific nature of what it is, but our existence is not part of that nature. And what we mean by that is that those things could have not existed. You could not. It's possible that you never existed.
Oh, gotcha.
You don't exist out of necessity.
Is it a simulation thing? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
And let's take something that like a horse that doesn't have an eternal soul. That thing will stop existing at some point in time, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Came into existence, came out of existence.
Yeah.
So we can clearly see its essence and existence are not the same thing. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so if its essence is not to exist, like if it's not part of its nature to exist,
then
it has to get its existence from someplace else.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Does that make sense? Tracking?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So then the distinction is really critical because we need an explanation for the fact that something exists rather than nothing at all, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because I exist, I have my essence, but it's clearly not my essence to exist. It's not part of my nature to exist, because if it was part of my nature to exist, I'd exist necessarily.
Yeah. And like if you were talking about a unicorn,
right?
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't
You know
exist.
what I'm saying? Yeah. So I got you. Yeah.
All right. So here's where the argument comes in. He'll argue that everything in the world is contingent, meaning its essence does not necessitate its existence. This leads to some observations. So things exist, but do not have to exist. We kind of already covered this.
Yeah.
They could fail to exist. At some point in time, they could stop existing. Some examples, you didn't exist 200 years ago, yet you exist now. Same is true for stars, planets, civilizations, even species. They come into existence, they go out of existence. Things have potential.
You think I have potential?
Oh, man, you got some potential.
Oh, thanks, man. That's great.
Oftentimes people use that in a good way, and it is good for contingent beings, but God has no potential.
That's right. Because if he had potential, he could change. That's actually not, that's a scary. You don't want him to change what he said. Yeah.
Right. Because if he had potential, either he could get worse than what he is, or he's not as good as he could be and he could get better,
And he's not the greatest. Yeah.
Right.
Because and our God's pretty great. So there's not a good direction to go if you have potential to change. That's right.
But contingent things like us, we have potential. That means we are subject to change. A tree grows from a seed, lives for a few centuries maybe, eventually decays. Civilizations rise and fall. This means their existence is not necessary. They're dependent on something
because they
outside
come and go.
Them. Yeah.
Something else would be more steadfast. I gotcha. Yeah.
So hopefully maybe you can see where this argument's going. Things must have an explanation for their existence, even if there were an infinite regress of contingent causes. So the cosmological argument that we talked about, we spend a lot of time showing that the past cannot go backwards forever. There has to be a beginning for contingent things, right? The universe had to come into existence. We talked about how, physically, scientifically, that the past cannot be backwards infinite. But we could even grant that to the skeptic. We could say, for the sake of argument, we'll grant to you that even if the universe was infinitely eternal in the past, it would still just be a long chain of dominoes.
Huge chain,
right?
Of
contingent things. And even that thing would have to have
at some point
explanation for its existence, right?
Right.
And this kind of is borrowing a little bit from Leibniz's cosmological argument. But so things, imagine chain of dominoes falling indefinitely. The series itself still needs an explanation. So even if the universe were eternal, it would still need a reason why it exists now rather than not existing. So we must receive our existence from somewhere. Since things don't have the reasons for their own existence, in their essence, their existence must be received from something else. So the bottom line is there must be something that exists whose essence is existence itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like similar argumentation. I mean, it's different, but it's like coming from the same point that there's just got to be something outside of all these things that ebb and flow, and the something is something that most likely does not. It can't be ebb and flowy as well.
Yep. So if everything were contingent, then there would be nothing that exists. But since we do have something exist, it means that there has to be something that exists that's not contingent.
If everything were contingent, then nothing would exist. That's what you're saying. Yeah. So it's like, and stuff exists, right? Like logically. Yeah. Right. Gotcha. Yeah.
So that means there has to be something that's not contingent, something that's necessary. Parmenides was another Greek philosopher, and he had this to say. It kind of goes along with what Aquinas would say in Aristotle. Being itself cannot be created or destroyed. Being itself. Like essences can rise and fall, but existence itself, like, trying to think separating that balloon, the shape of the balloon from the air, and if the air is existence, like if that shape goes out of existence, that air still goes someplace else, right?
I got that.
It cannot be created or destroyed. In order to create being, something must have had to first exist. In order to destroy being, something is going to continue to exist. Like whatever destroyed the being, would have to exist, and then it would have being. And so he comes to this absolute nothingness can produce nothing. And it has this famous phrase, ex nihilo nihil fit.
Nice. Yeah. Most people would know ex nihilo.
Yeah.
You might not know the rest of it, but you're like, you should know that
one.
Right.
Yeah. So ex nihilo means out of nothing. So we say God created the cosmos ex nihilo. Out of nothing, we mean it had no material cause, right? But God was still there. He existed, right? And so he's saying out of nothing, nothing comes. For the Sound of Music folks, I know this isn't you, so just bear with me.
I don't know anything about it. I just saw where I went to undergrad is doing a Sound of Music production. So saw a lot of Nazis running around. So apparently it's a World War II thing. I'm learning.
There are.
Yeah, that
is crazy.
Yeah.
Like you have to have Nazi uniforms to put some of these.
You can't
these things on. Yeah, it's like Why do you have all these Nazi flags? Well, because we're putting on Sound of Music.
Big Julie Andrews fan. Yeah.
But there's a song there where she sings, "Nothing comes from nothing, nothing ever could." So, yeah.
She's tracking Julie.
Yeah, so she's tracking Parmenides, you know what I'm saying?
That's great.
All right, so if that is the case, then we have to have at least one necessary being whose existence not depending on anything else, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you might say, well, what if there's multiple things whose essence is to exist?
Yeah.
But there can't be.
Logically, you're saying.
Logically, because we can distinguish between me and you, a rose and a tree, because of our different essences. But if my essence is existence itself and your essence is existence itself, then we would be identical. There'd be nothing to distinguish us. Yeah. So that's how we can say there's really only one God, because of the indistinguishable nature, indiscernible nature of identicals. Yeah. That's
so this idea of this dualism where there's like an eternal good force and eternal bad force. Not vibing with that.
It doesn't work, and this is probably first year master's level of not back in the day. Back in the Aquinas' day, this would have been maybe junior high.
It's great.
But today it's master's level.
People just knew so much more. It's crazy.
But what was the question? Sorry, I got distracted.
Dualism. Eternal good, eternal bad being, or whether it's a being or not,
So we went through pains to show that existence, oneness, I think goodness, and maybe those are the three. Maybe there's a fourth one. Okay. All, in one sense, are the same thing.
Say it one more time.
Existence, goodness, and the oneness.
Okay. Yeah.
And how a being whose essence is existence itself has no other properties. That is its single property, and it is good, and so it is one, and it is existence. That's if you're interested in that, you can go find more. It's probably too much for this podcast to break out those details.
That's good. Yeah, I like it.
All right, so that being must be pure existence itself, and so on to number 4, the conclusion: God is the subsistent being itself. So he's pure actuality, no potentiality. He cannot not exist. And so some of the implications of this: God is uncaused, because if he were caused, then he would be necessary. God is eternal. If he ceased to exist, he would not be necessary. God is unchanging. If he could change, he would have potentiality rather than pure actuality. God is simple, not composite, because if he were composed of parts, he would depend on something prior to himself. God is the explanation of existence itself. Without him, nothing could exist. The Latin is God is ipsum esse subsistens, or he is existence itself. His essence is existence itself.
No, I like that. When I think of Aquinas, Thomas thinking, the first thing that comes into my mind is God is simple. That's like the one thing that I just automatically associate for whatever reason. I think it's been, people have talked about it in the last few years a little bit more. Yeah. And I think that's good. It all, logically comes out. And I like, we've got a couple of different arguments that say like not the same thing, but it points in the same direction in a different way,
Yeah. So if we were talking about the cosmological argument, it would be like coming across something and going, why did this thing exist? Like, how did this thing come into existence, right?
Okay, yeah.
This argument is like you're hearing music and you're like, what is making that music?
Oh, yeah.
Because not only did I come into existence, not only did the universe come into existence, but it continues to exist. So the fact that we still exist and it's not in our essence to exist, it means that God is lending his essence, his existence, his essence to exist to us right now. So there are verses that talk about, he holds everything together. All things are summed up in him. All those ideas are true from a philosophical standpoint as well.
Now that's great. I think apologetics, some of this philosophy, it's always been challenging for me, where it's not, I think it is complicated. It's really not that, on one level, it's very complicated. You have to do a little bit of time. And another way, it's kind of like it's kind of a similar thing, I feel like, with like economics. A lot of it is like common sense with terms. Right. If you're going to like just learn the terms and definitions, then it makes a lot more sense. But when you're throwing out terms and you don't know, you haven't been trained in like a definition, it can seem overwhelming, but it's like just, some of these things like essence, existence, just know what they mean. Right. And then you can talk with them a little bit more freely, and it's not as overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember being 17, having some doubts about God's existence, my salvation and stuff. And I remember thinking, the earth is here. Mm-hmm. How did it get here? There needs to be an explanation for it. Okay.
Yeah.
And really philosophy is just come alongside that and go, that's a good idea. Let's make that more bulletproof against attacks. Let's use some fancy words to help round it out so that when people try to naysay it, you're going, well, no, I formulated my argument so that it can withstand what you're saying. And that's good because all these are really, I think they are grounded in some, other than maybe the ontological argument.
Oh, boy.
It's all grounded in, some common sense ideas. And so this idea that I don't exist by myself, there has to be something that exists in and of itself. That's a pretty common sense notion. That's really what this argument is saying.
That is great. I'm looking forward to some more, whether it's a Thomist Thursday or a different apologetic. I know Thomism is probably on your mind just because that was like integral in the schooling you went to. And really where a lot of this, came from anyway. It's like you're saying, Aristotle, Plato, and then this Renaissance. And then, so a lot of it, he kind of like set the stage where a lot of people borrow from his stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Who's like the other, I guess you would just be more, postmodern. And if you're like rejecting Aquinas stuff or like, you know what I mean? Or like, what's
not postmodern, you'd be more Kantian.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. That's a big one.
So you'd be Kantian. Yeah. So like William Lane Craig is probably, Kantian compared to
that's good.
What's the guy that founded SES?
Oh, Geisler?
Geisler.
No. Okay, yeah, gotcha. I'm glad I could help you out on your alma mater there. I'm just kidding. Awesome. Well, can you tease out any other arguments maybe on a future episode? Or we don't know? Yeah?
Oh, I mean, yeah.
That you're thinking would be like good?
If we wanted, so Aquinas has some other ones like from motion and we had to memorize them back in the day. This one that I gave you, I think, is the best one.
Okay, yeah.
And then, so there's theological.
Oh, yeah.
From the basically argument from design. There's a moral argument. There is the ontological argument. Those probably are your biggest arguments for God's existence. The moral argument falls into this family of arguments that even our presuppositionalists will buy into this family of arguments. Yeah.
Man.
So it's a good argument. So you could take the same argument we give for the moral argument, and you could replace it with knowledge. You could replace it with beauty. Mathematics. So we'll go over that when we get there.
Because I feel like people that are critical of, and I'm not the expert in this space, like Thomism, maybe like some pre-suppers who are like, all this. They're just like, what I hear them saying are things like, we're just going to use what Aristotle's, like, why we start with Aristotle? It's like, well, some of the things that if you're saying, if things are true or not true, they're true or not true. Right. But I think
all truth is God's truth.
Yeah. You hear some of that sometimes. And I can't remember and then everyone's like, well, Aquinas was so Catholic. You hear that sometimes too. Like, not that you have to embrace everything Aquinas says. You can, pick the good parts,
If I'm honest and transparent with you, I didn't read every single book that I was assigned.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
It's true. However, there is one book that I read all of, On Evil, or De Malo, by Thomas Aquinas.
Okay, yeah.
To me, it is a masterpiece of talking about what evil is. And you said he's Catholic. Like, think about a Catholic who cannot controvert anything that has been said in the creeds, or a pope has said ex cathedra, or some cardinal who is very influential said, because that's your life on the line.
Oh yeah,
but you're still dedicated to the truth. If you have that vision, and then you read On Evil, you'll go, wow, this guy was wise as a dove, innocent, wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove, because he would say, you've heard it was said. And sometimes he'll talk about Aristotle.
Oh, yeah.
Or, you've heard it said, and he'll say, and this is true in this respect. Like there's a way of thinking about this that's true. And here's another way that it's true. And here's another way it's true. And he'll give you all these different things. And he'll say, and here's the conclusion to that. And he does this over and over and over again. And so you do get some Catholic stuff in there. Yeah. Like you might see some venial or mortal sins be mentioned in there. Yeah. But most of the time, he's just dealing with kind of your standard stuff.
Yeah. And everyone's a product of their own environment, too, where it's like, man, it's just today's world is not that world where it's like okay to say whatever. Or it's like there's 800 different denominations. Yeah. It's like a different world. And, you look at Irenaeus and Origen, it's like you can find some bad stuff where you can look at, even Augustine and be like, why would you say this? So
even John Piper.
What? No, hey, you bite your tongue. So I think some of that's like uncharitable. It's easy to look back, and I've never read a lot of Aquinas to make that. So when people talk, I never know how much claims, and I think it's more of like turf wars, like my way's better than their way, so I'm going to try to undermine some of this stuff. But he's who else was around Aquinas's time? I mean, I feel like that's the guy.
Yeah, man, you're trying to.
Sorry, I was trying to think of people around. Not that I don't know. I mean,
I could pull out my medieval philosophers. There were some good Islamic medieval philosophers.
Oh yeah, because they had kind of
this is where we get the name for Kalam, cosmological argument. There's a guy whose name starts with an A. That's the most I can remember from Islam, who was a doctor, and he was doing a lot of good things. Unfortunately, there was this revolution where they kind of burned all that stuff, and they went back to the Dark Ages.
Oh yeah.
They burned all of the stuff in Babylon, I believe, and they kind of just set them backwards because they were doing some pretty good stuff, some good thinkers, despite their false religious ideas. But then they were overcome by that.
Well, I think this is great. We'll kind of keep maybe running through these once a month or something.
Yeah.
But I love it. Any parting words on apologetics?
Apologetics are they're good for the people who are running their mouths.
Okay.
Saying bad things. Well, that's not actually true.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because of this and this, you kind of stop the detractors. They're good for seekers.
Yeah.
And then I was talking to a gentleman at our church today who said he's dealing with doubts.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, apologetics can be good for your biggest critic sometimes is yourself.
Right.
You have your own doubts. You think about So
that's what I like about apologetics. Like you should apply, as long as you're applying the same rigor of testing to everything. Test everything. You know what I'm saying? I think the problem is when people are really harsh with Christianity and then they don't apply that to other things. But it's like, do that. See what comes out. You know?
Unfortunately, like if you applied the same standards, you would basically end in a place where you can't know anything.
And that's why probably so many people are at that spot where they can't know anything because they're like, well, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's good. Well, look forward to some more of these. That's our take. Thanks for listening to Take Two. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.